Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at gcnlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? Here we go. Your dial set correctly to USA Prepares. We're delighted you're with us in class today. And we're going to be in class for 2 hours. And the class originates in Missouri, in the Ozark Mountains. And teaching the class today is Guineith Isaacs, and she is in Australia. Both of us are broadcasting off-grid. And I believe this is the very first transcontinental radio broadcast that is broadcasting off-grid, end to end. Andy's engineering the broadcast in Minnesota at GCN. I'm Vincent Finelli. Welcome, Guineith Isaacs.
Hello, Vincent. How are you this morning? It's good to be back.
Oh, it's great to hear your voice. It really is. And, that's one of the things we're going to talk about today is, things that can go wrong and how they can interrupt the economy of the family. Yeah. And by the way, Guineith, it's -7 here at the farm, -7. It's freezing cold. The animals are shivering. Mrs. Finelli is feeding them with our son right now. And the calf that we talked about was born on Sunday, late Sunday afternoon, is doing well. And I've called that store Orscheln. I called corporate headquarters. I want to talk to the president. I haven't gotten there yet. I've placed 2 calls, and the best I'm able to do with the internet number that I've gotten for them is customer service. That's the best I can do. And would you think that customer service would be interested in calling me back? I don't know. I don't know if they're interested or not, but I can tell you that they have not called me back. I've only placed 2 calls, and I'll probably place a couple a day, and I'll broadcast that I have not gotten through to Orscheln customer service. I'll keep letting you know what the status is, and if I don't hear from them, I'll keep letting you know. So, am I interested in shopping at Orscheln? I want to talk to the CEO first. I want to know what their business model is. Do they care about their customers, or are they just there to generate a profit for the shareholders? That's what I want to know. That's important to me. So, how did we figure this out? Well, what we did was we called when Orscheln wouldn't help us with the colostrum that we needed. We called a friend in another town, 50-mile round trip from our farm, and he was the nearest store that was still open. They stayed open until 7 o'clock p.m., and he was able to race over there, get some colostrum, and we drove over to meet him, and we've got the colostrum and the calf, and everything's good so far. So, I don't know. To me, it's just one more sign of the decline of society. Profits before anything. That seems to be the name of the game with big companies. Profit. And, if you think about it, can you really call and talk to somebody at a big company? Can you really do that? Do they really care? Do they really care? I don't think so much. I don't think they care so much. Guineith, do you have any comments on that before we continue?
Mostly with big corporations, you'll find they don't really care about you as an individual. That's a really good reason to support mom and pop type businesses, especially in small country towns, because, usually they are struggling anyway, from what I've seen. because we live in a rural area, and there's one town which is around about 20 kilometres from us, and another town that's about 40 kilometres from us. And, between the both of them, most of the big chains don't come to those towns because they've both got around about a population of around about 900 or 1,000 people in each town. And the big corporations simply don't consider that it's enough of a population base for them, although the one that's 40 kilometres away does have a few big chains. I think it must have a slightly bigger population in it than the closer one, because it's basically a little way closer on the major highway, the interstate highway, to the large regional centre, which has a population of about 120,000. So, but it's, in either place, the mom and pops are really struggling. It's a perpetual battle, and I know some of these business owners personally because over the years they've become my friends. I want to go and buy stuff off of them because they're my friends, and I want to help them. You know what I mean? And because they're my friends, they want to help me too, if they at all possibly can. And so that's it's a thing of that's not how it operates with big chains. With big chains, they have to. They feel the need. They've got shareholders. They feel the need that they have to generate a profit. But what they can forget is that their profit comes from us. And if they don't treat us well, then we're not going to come back.
Yeah, and that's what's happening at Sears, the big store that, they've been around over 100 years. And they had a catalog that was huge. I mean, you could buy anything at Sears. You could buy tools and lawnmowers and clothes and watches and jewelry and paint and appliances. And you could even buy a house. Water softeners, heating systems, shingles, anything, nails, anything that you wanted, you could buy at Sears. Well, they lost their way. And what they've done is they feel that they work for their shareholders. They've even told me that. Store manager of a Sears store decades ago told me that they don't work for the customer, they work for the shareholder. And good for them, because they are now reaping the rewards of working for the shareholder. Sears is closing stores at record rates, and customers like me, I'm not going back there. Why would I want to go to Sears? What? Satisfaction guaranteed or your money back. That's something that they used to be proud of that. They put it over the entrances of all their stores. Satisfaction guaranteed or your money back. That meant that if you bought it at Sears and you weren't happy with it, you could bring it back. Tomorrow, next year, 10 years from now, you could bring it back and say, you know what, I'm not happy with this. And they'd give you your money back. They really would. And I know it's true. I absolutely know it's true because I used to work there back in the early 1970s, my first job. And I remember a story that I was told by one of the department managers. And back then, ladies wore gloves. If they went to church, they would wear white gloves, white leather gloves. And one lady bought these leather gloves and decided to wash them. So she put them in her clothes washing machine, took them out, and they shrunk. So much that, kind of like O.J. Simpson, the glove didn't fit, right, because it got wet. Well, she brought it back to Sears and said, I'm not happy with these. Now, obviously, she did the wrong thing. They're not supposed to be washed in the washing machine, and they will shrink. Everybody knows that, right? Well, the store gave her money back because she wasn't satisfied. Her ignorance prevented her from being satisfied, but the store made good on it. And that was a really neat thing. And so here's the question I have for you, Guineith. In those mom and pop stores that you patronize in Australia where you live, if they sold colostrum and you needed it and you said, you know what, I know you're going to be closed by the time I can get there. It's going to take me an hour to get there. So would you leave it out back or leave it out front, put my name on it, and I'll pay you the next time I'm in the store? Would they do that for you?
Well, unfortunately, they normally don't extend credit to anyone because there's, there really have been people who have not paid in the town. So they have to make it a policy of, that everybody pays for their feed. But certainly they'll leave it out the front for me to pick up,
If you pay for it.
If you pay for it. But they take MasterCard, and they take MasterCard over the phone.
Yeah, Orslin doesn't do that. Orslin will not take a credit card over the phone.
I heard that. That's utterly ridiculous.
It's pretty easy to do. It's pretty easy to do. As a matter of fact, you can go to stores and if they can't, let's say your credit card has a magnetic stripe and they can't read it, they can still enter it by hand. Okay, they can still type in those 16 digits, which would be the same thing as taking it over the phone. I'm not quite sure I understand what the big deal is, but I really don't like the fact that companies don't consider the individual. So if they have had a problem with people not paying, do they have a blanket policy where they say, "No, we're not going to trust anybody"? I mean, unfortunately, that's a problem with hitchhiking. Hitchhiking, used to be able to stick your thumb out, and if someone thought you looked respectable, you'd pick them up and give them a ride. That would be in the 1970s. Today, I guess I understand the problem a little better because I haven't picked up a hitchhiker because even if it's a person that looks like they're alone and they really need help, you don't know if somebody's hiding in the bushes, right behind them. You don't know.
Yeah.
You don't know.
And around here, you've got the reverse situation. Everybody's frightened to hitchhike because you had a famous serial killer who came from around about, within 150 or 200 kilometres from here. And that was if you wanted to ever look it up on the internet, go Victoria, Australia, backpacker killer.
Guineith Isaacs is with us. She's live in Australia. It's the middle of the night there. And Guineith, you had some challenges. Well, I'll tell you. Let me go back to this. You mentioned Victoria, Australia, backpack killer. So I looked it up. And there are images of the victims and of the killer. And it looks like there's even a book called Catching, is it pronounced Milat, M-I-L-A-T?
That's right, Ivan Milat. And he was a guy who was basically going around driving in his car, picking up hitchhikers, taking them to, or killing them, and then taking them to a state forest and burying them. And he did this with a bunch of backpackers. And I remember when that happened, I was living in Victoria at the time. Everybody stopped hitchhiking overnight, basically, unless they were tourists. And even then, the word went out through the backpacker hostels and all that sort of thing. Don't backpack. And basically, there's not anywhere near as many hitchhikers as there once was. And sometimes there'll be local people who are walking, and people who know them will stop and give them a lift into town. But yes, certainly the other problem around here exists as well, where you can't trust everybody, and there are people who are predatory, who go around and don't have the best intentions and basically pick people up. They don't murder them, but they, they don't have the best intentions either. And it's unfortunately not the friendly world it was back when you and I were kids, which is not that long ago. You know, it's only we're only talking back in the 1970s and 1980s.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah.
And you know, I used to hitchhike too. I mean, we all hitchhiked. You know, if you didn't have a vehicle, and if you didn't have a state-authorized permit to operate a vehicle, you know, back then, simply stuck your thumb out, and people would. No, it wasn't. It really wasn't. And you know, after school, we would want to go to the next town over, or we'd have a job, and we'd need to get there, and it's too far to pedal a bike quickly. So stick out our thumb, and someone would pick us up. And what we would have, we had book bags. We didn't have backpacks back then, and the school colors were identified on the book bag, and we all had these, you know, school issued, or you could buy them at the bookstore. You get this book bag, and it would last you all throughout high school. It was that sturdy, and it had the logo of the school as well as the colors. And you know, if you had your book bag, people would say, "Well, you know, those guys are pretty clean cut," and they'd pick us up, no problem. And they knew where we went to school. The locals knew us. And it was great. It really was. And one of the bad things was that, you know, if you were hitchhiking and you had your bag and one of your neighbors recognized you going the opposite direction, they'd call your mom and say, "Hey, I saw Vinny hitchhiking. Just want to let you know." And then Vinny would hear about it when he got home.
Your parents would get upset because they were obviously more aware of the emerging dangers than probably you were.
That's right.
And
That's right.
Yeah. And of course, your parents are just concerned for your safety.
Right. And you know, parents are always concerned about their children's safety, regardless of how old their children are, whether they're 30, 40, 50 years old, 60 years old. And I know that for a fact. Guineith, you had a tough time, and you want to talk about telephones, internet, cash flow, and income. We're going into a break right now, and as soon as we come back from the break, let's talk about that. Telephones, internet, cash flow, and income. How, when something goes wrong, it can wreak havoc on the family's finances. We'll be right back. So, Guineith, you live in Australia, and you live in a mud farmhouse. You know, windows and doors and all that, but it's made out of earth. And you have solar generated electricity. So when the sun is shining, you have electricity. When it's not, you don't. You have a landline, and you operate your business from your farmhouse. And you do multiple things. So you're a farmer, and you raise plants and sell them, and you transact business with locals, and you sell to other businesses. And then you also have a business that you operate at the end of a telephone line. What happened?
That's right. Well, the telephone line went out. And if that happens, then we can't work. And it was a multiple fault. Okay, so probably around about a month ago now, there was a lightning storm, and there were a few big local lightning strikes, and one of them apparently was just up the road, and it took out a portion of the telephone exchange. And so when that happened, obviously, there were a bunch of people around here who more or less instantly had no telephone service. So, and our household was one of them. And basically when that happens, it means I can't operate in my main source of income, which is being a telephonist. So, and that's just how it is. So you've got to sort of, when that happens, instead of worrying, you have to just shrug your shoulders and say, oh, well, and contact the telephone company and let them know so that they can do the appropriate line tests. And at that time, they determined that there was a short on somewhere on the exchange. And so, they basically said, okay, we'll send a technician out to fix it. It should be fixed in a few days. But anyway, what happened, what I didn't realize, and this must have happened during the same storm, was it looks as if it was an animal kicked it out, tripped over the telephone wire on our own property and kicked it out, meaning that they, got their foot caught around the telephone wire as it was going down onto the ground and sort of lifted their foot and gone bang. And if an animal weighing around about 500 kilograms does that to a telephone wire, it's going to be absolutely no competition whatsoever. The telephone wire is going to be the one to go. And that's what happened. But silly me didn't think to go up and check the wire. I should have. Sometimes you do kick yourself. Nobody gets things right absolutely all of the time. But that was what happened, and I didn't immediately realize it because there was actually this other fault on the exchange as well, where they had a lightning strike, and obviously something like that happens. I guess they have to do a bit more equipment replacement than they would on most other faults. Would that be right, Vincent?
Yeah, and Guineith, very shortly you should be receiving a package in the mail with some heat shrink tubing. And class, Guineith and I have talked about this off the air, and she spliced the wires together herself and taped them with electrical tape. And I suggested that because it's outside, even though it's arid in where she lives, what you can do is she can put this heat shrink tubing. It's like it's a plastic sleeve that goes over the connection, the electrical wiring connection, and then you just heat it up a little bit. You could heat it with, I don't recommend this, I have a heat gun. It goes to about 700 degrees or 500 degrees, and it will heat the tubing, and you heat it gently, and it shrinks, and it conforms to the shape of the splice and of the wire and of the insulation. And that makes a pretty good, mostly watertight connection, which can sustain more abuse than just twisting wires together and putting electrical tape around them. So you'll be getting that. And some people use a soldering iron, the heat of a soldering iron, very, very close to the heat shrink tubing. I'm talking like maybe 25 thousandths of an inch away, and it will melt the heat shrink into place. So it really works well. And I think that will help you a little bit in solving this problem. And, well, making that connection last longer, make it more durable. So I've got to applaud you for finding this, figuring out that you need to put the wires together, splicing them together, taping them. That's pretty darn good. Most people would just not be able to do that. They wouldn't figure out, all right, let's trace this down. Where could the problem be? We got to call somebody. I want to mention something before we continue. In the United States right now, we're having a tough time with the weather. And I've talked to people all over the East Coast, and pipes are freezing. And it makes my blood boil, really, when I think about this, because we have building codes. We have building inspectors in the counties, and, they look at the houses when they're constructed, and they go, okay, you got to change this and this, and then then we'll give you the permit to use your own property. So we have government inspectors, detectors, and rejectors, and they look at the construction. They say it's okay, and yet when we have 0-degree temperatures, the pipes freeze. Now, who in their right mind would allow, with building codes, buildings that you have to run the faucets in order to protect the pipes from freezing? Who would do that? And I look at our house right here in Missouri, and I think we're the only guys we know that don't do two things, or one of two things. One, we have a well, a water well, and we don't have a little building over it where we have to put a heater inside the little shed over the well pump that's outside. Why would anybody put the well pump and the well tank outside? I don't know. Why would they do that? Well, it doesn't make sense to me, because you have to run a heater or, some light bulbs. And then what happens if that light bulb that provides heat to protect the little pipes from freezing in the shed, if that light bulb burns out? Well, then the pipes freeze. The other thing is, why would people have to run their faucets to prevent pipes from freezing in their house? Why? Well, because they're not insulated properly. They're in an area that's not heated. Who would design a house like that? So we're the only ones I know in this part of in our neck of the woods who don't have to do that stuff. Because, one, we didn't put any plumbing on outside uninsulated walls. We didn't put any plumbing in outside that can freeze. All of our plumbing is on inside walls where I can get to it. I can see it. And it gets warmed by the heat in the rooms in the house. Except for pipes running through the kitchen ceiling. But you know what? A sheetrock knife, if I have a problem, I can fix that. Just cut out some sheetrock. But I was really careful to minimize that everywhere I could. But we don't have to run the faucets and let them drip. I don't get it. I just don't get it.
Yeah. And the other thing is, in an area where you habitually have snowy winters, they, in generations past, they used to always build the pipes inside the house, or, inside the walls of the house, or inside the internal walls. That was just a matter of course. In areas where you had snow on the ground for a prolonged period of time every winter. And I think the difference with this winter in some areas is this winter is exceptionally harsh, and in the Northern Hemisphere generally. And I don't know if the class heard it, but they've actually had snow in the Sahara Desert for the first time in several hundred years.
Right.
Just these last few days. And it probably wasn't very heavy. There probably wasn't very much of it. I would be very surprised if you could build a snowman in the Sahara. But they did have snow in the Sahara Desert for the first time in hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. So that shows the exceptional coldness of this Northern Hemisphere winter that you've got, and how it must be at the moment in places like Alaska and Siberia is just, you would wonder how people could even live there, how they could even survive there, because they must really be getting the hammer of it.
Well, I'll tell you what's happening here. We have a friend, and we check on them and various people throughout the country and ask them how they're doing. Are they okay? And what we're finding is that people are saying, they're cold. What's happening is the heating systems that they have in their homes is not able to keep up with the heat loss of their homes. So, for example, and we're having the same problem here. We heat our house with wood, as you do. And this morning, the studio was 59 degrees. Now, it's not that we don't have heat here. It's just that our heating with wood is a challenge, because we can turn the thermostat up and waste wood, and have to cut more wood and split more wood and haul more wood and load more wood into the fire, or we can economize, and we've chosen to economize. But many houses who have modern heating systems, the heating systems can't keep up. Heat pumps don't work in less than 25 degrees Fahrenheit. We'll be right back. So, Guineith, we were talking about telephones, internet, cash flow, and income. And, you know, it really is a challenge. And I mentioned to our broadcast class that, you know, at some point, Vinny's going to go away. And I don't know when that is. And I'm not saying that I've turned in my retirement papers to the network. It's not like that at all. However, what could happen is, well, we could have a grid down situation. And if the grid's down, the internet's down. If the internet's down, Vinny's not going to be able to broadcast. I mean, I can broadcast, but, you know, are we going to have a connection all the way from our farm in Missouri, where I've got electricity because I'm off grid just like you are. So you can run your telephone. I can run my telephone. But after that, there's a lot of distance between us. There's a lot of distance between you in Australia and the network in Minnesota, in the United States. And there's a lot of distance between me in Missouri and the network in Minnesota. Satellites are involved, trunk lines are involved, switches, routers, uninterruptible power supplies. That's all involved. Diesel generators, natural gas generators. You know, all kinds of things have to happen in order for us to broadcast. Well, if we have a serious outage, I'm not going to be broadcasting. As a matter of fact, if we have a serious outage on the grid, cars will be stuck where they are within about a week. You won't be able to go anywhere. We'll be out of fuel. It doesn't really matter where you live. You will be out of fuel. So when I look at these things and I consider them, have they happened? Yeah, they have. Not grid down, but completely. But yeah, we've had local power outages that have, you know, involved tens of thousands of people. That's happened. We've had power outages that have lasted 11 days. People have died, frozen to death in the winter because of ice storms. That's happened. We've had the inability to get fuel because there's so much ice on the road that no one could drive. It's just a sheet of ice. And people couldn't get to work. They couldn't get to work to sell you the stuff that you want because you don't have it because you ran out of it. Well, and then the delivery trucks couldn't resupply the stores. It was a mess. And it was weather-related, you know, natural. Well, maybe natural enhanced by chemical spraying. But nonetheless, it's happened. So, Guineith, we are, you know, if I had to rely on the internet to earn an income, I'd be pretty concerned because in my neck of the woods, it's not all that reliable.
Yeah. Well, it's, you know, it's like this. You have to take account of this, and you have to have multiple sources of income, and to not have it so that they're all reliant on technology. You know what I mean? To have some of them, like, for instance, you raise cows, okay, and, you know, if it came the worst to the worst, okay, you could probably set up a sign at your front gate. If you went to a total grid down situation, you could probably set up a sign at your gate and say, fresh beef for sale.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You
Sure.
could open a butcher shop, basically, and people who lived in the local area would get to know that when they need some, you know, fresh meat, that Vinny's place is the place to go.
Yeah.
And maybe it wouldn't be such a grand income, but the word would go out, and, you know, I don't know how often you would slaughter a beast, maybe once or twice a week. And, you know, and you would supply your local area with meat. And then they would bring things that they would either bring fiat currency if that was still circulating, which it probably would be for a while anyway, or they would bring stuff that they needed to, you know, that you needed in return for something that they needed. And the economy would survive because you've got something real to contribute there.
When we come back, we're going into another break, Guineith. When we come back, I'd like to talk about books versus the Internet for just a couple minutes. And, I advocate books because, well, when the power's down, the Internet's down, heck, how can you find it? How can you read about it? It's tough. Guineith Isaacs, live in Australia. I'm Vince Finelli. Everyone all set? Cocked, locked, hour number 2 of USA Prepares. Guineith Isaacs is with us, and we're talking about, what do you do? What do you do when the telephones go down, the Internet goes down? You've got, you still have to maintain cash flow. You still have to pay the bills. The tax man's at the door. I mean, it's tough. It's tough. So Guineith has recommended thinking about, multiple income streams. And it's kind of like investing. Some people recommend diversifying. What do we do here at the farm? Well, we raise cows, and we do some other things as well. And so if one of those income streams takes a hit, well, there are the others, and they can help. Guineith, your thoughts?
Okay. Well, what I was saying about the butchers, I just thought I'd let everybody know there's particular farmers around here that I know that if I gave them a call, that they would, for instance, be able to deliver a sheep to me. Okay? And that sheep might be on the hoof, or that sheep might be, in some Ziploc bags, big ones.
Yeah.
Meaning that they would be happy to deliver some meat to me if I needed it, whether that meat was on the hoof or whether that meat was in nicely prepared packages. So that's a way that farmers around here operate as a bit of an extra way to earn income. And I had to buy some feed recently, and I contacted a farmer who lives locally. And these guys, we just have 20 acres of land, but these particular farmers, there's a lot of farmers around here who have full-on ranches of between 5, 10, maybe 20,000 acres. Okay, so quite substantial holdings. And then there's these little 10 and 20-acre blocks, which are sort of located in various places. And, so I bought the feed from this farmer, and then I said, oh, by the way, do you have some star posts and some fencing wire at your place at the moment? And he said, oh, well, let me have a think about that. Yeah, I think we have, actually. And so he went out and had a look and found that he had some spare fencing wire and some spare pickets. And so he came back to me and said, oh, yes, I've got X amount. And I said, great, I'll buy those as well. So that's a way that farmer is generating himself some extra income. Because obviously, in this country, okay, fences for farmers are a tax deduction, okay? So if you're a farmer and you have fences, the fences need replacing every now and again, okay? They have a depreciation schedule, and they're a tax deduction. So you pull your old fences out, and you replace them with brand spanking new fences, and then you don't have to pay that money to the tax man. It's, it goes for harvesters, it goes for, the price that you have to pay to get livestock onto the farm. It goes for practically everything. But the thing is that farmer is, he's then got a whole lot of used fencing wire and used star pickets lying around his place. And so then he is able to liquidate them. So that's what a lot of farmers actually do. And it earns them an income, an extra income, And but like I say, if you're a sheep farmer, you don't just have sheep. You'll have a wheat crop. That's diversification, but it's still farming, okay? and then you would take some of your income, and you might decide there's another farmer who lives locally. He has stallions, standard bred stallions. That's another way that he earns himself an income, because he's got good standard bred stallions. His stallions run with the sheep, and they also help to protect the sheep from dog attack. It's this flexible way of thinking that we are talking about here for people to not just be focused on one particular way of doing things and one particular way of acting, and painting themselves into a corner, basically. So, yeah, this is it. And in a farming economy, people tend to do this as a matter of course. Their land produces a bit of produce, it produces a bit of income, and they take that income and they say, right, where can I put that? And so they tend to keep the cash circulating through the economy. Mm-hmm. Okay? That's how things tend to happen around here. Is that more or less how things would happen where you are, Vincent?
Yeah.
That's amongst the farmers themselves.
Yeah, it's exactly the way it happens here. And there's another component to that. So, for example, we have some farmer friends, and they raise different produce items in their gardens than we do. And so what happens is they'll say, you know what, we've got extra of this, and actually they'll just show up with it. They'll just show up with it and say, we had this extra, and we want you to have it. And so what do? Well, when we have surpluses, we do the same thing, but we also do something else. So, for example, it's become known in our neck of the woods that when people have difficulty with their machinery, it kind of shows up here. And yeah, their vehicles, and so they'll say, can you take a look at this, and can we look under it and see what that banging noise is, or where that oil leak is coming from? And so we put it up on the lift, and we say, okay, well, we know what to do. We can fix that. Here's what it's going to take. And so we will fix their vehicles on a friendship basis for them. And then they help us with things that we need. So there's this, you can call it an underground economy, you can call it bartering, you can call it just being friends.
Gift economy.
Yeah, gift economy. And we're all friends, and we do these things for each other. And it's really kind of nice. Yeah.
And something, the thing is, these farmers that I've got to meet since I've been here, most of them are absolutely fantastic, and I would consider them to be my friends, Yeah, it's not that, like, I'm the customer and that they're the ones who have the goods that I need, and so I'm buy. They absolutely do become your friends.
What we don't do is we don't have our hand out. We don't, when we go help someone, if they're stuck on the side of the road, and we say, we'll get our backhoe out and pull them out, or our tractor in the chain, and pull them out of the ditch, or if they get stuck in the mud on their farm, and we bring our tractor over and some chains, we'll pull them out. We don't go, listen, that was an hour and 45 minutes, and I could have been doing something else. And here is what it cost me in time, and so here's what you owe me. We don't do that. We just think that, it's the right thing to do. They're kind of in a jam, and we are able to help them, and we feel fortunate that we're able to help them. We really do.
Yeah.
Now, on the other hand, there are some people whom we have helped, and they take it for granted, and they don't appreciate it. And they don't say thank you. That only happens once. That only happens once. Mm-hmm. Because when it does, we don't have so much time anymore for them.
Yeah.
So, and these are the kind of people that will throw their trash out the window, when they're driving by. So I'm not saying that they're forgetful. I'm saying that they're a deliberate menace, in the area. Yeah. So we try to help them and try to encourage them to to see the light. But if they don't see the light the first time, we don't waste any more time on them. And I mean that.
Yeah.
And I feel bad because I've been doing this for years, encouraging people to become self-sufficient. And what I've determined is some people you just can't. It doesn't work. So I don't waste time on people who aren't interested in helping themselves. Now, I love it when people help themselves. I really do. And let me give you an example of a story that just happened. So I sent 2 books, which I think are among the very best books on plumbing and wiring, home wiring and home plumbing. I sent them to our daughter. I wanted her to have them at her house. And so she had them. She just received them, and she had them on the kitchen counter. And one of her friends came by, and this guy is, a little older than our daughter, and he saw the book on wiring on her counter, and he said, "Can I borrow that?" So he borrowed the book.
Oh, no. He didn't bring it back, did he?
No. It's a great story. I know this guy. I really like this guy. And when I go to the East Coast, I try to spend a little bit of time with him. We'll go have a bite to eat or something like that, something that I don't normally do, or he'll come over. And he's a really, really good guy. And so he borrowed the book because he needed to fix an electrical problem. So my next reaction to that is the minute I heard about that, I got on the computer in the kitchen, and I searched for that very book because I wanted to send it to him so he could have his own copy. Why? Because he took the initiative to try to fix this thing himself, and I thought that was really neat.
Oh, that was great.
And I want to talk a little bit more about that when we come back. We're going into another break. Guineith Isaacs. We'll be right back. So, Guineith, I found on the internet, used books, and I've given a couple of these away for people who really will use them. I don't want to waste money, and I found that you can buy these books that are typically $27 for about $4 on the internet, but they're used. Sometimes they've got writing on them. Sometimes they have a person's name on them. Sometimes they say library discard on them. Anyway, if they're good books, I explain to the person I'm buying them for that I think this is the best book on that particular subject for me. And so I bought one for me, and I bought one for, this other person as well. And I explained to them that, I don't think it's necessary to always buy brand new things for somebody else. I've explained that. So, class, what I'm saying is I think if you want to do that, buy something that's used for somebody else, I think it's okay. I really do. Now, I'm not talking about used shoes and, used clothing. I'm talking about, durable goods and books and things like that. So that's okay with me. And so that's what I've done. And sometimes you can't buy brand new what you're looking for. Sometimes it's not available anymore. Sometimes it's not made anymore.
Yeah.
So
I would absolutely agree.
Mm-hmm.
There's in the town that's about 40 kilometres away, it's more or less they have as their town business antique shops. They're on the highway. I go up there sometimes and I look for equipment that I need at this place in the antique shop because I know that probably I might get it there, whereas for me to buy it new, it would be prohibitively expensive because hardly anybody makes this sort of equipment anymore, but often it's available as in the antique shops because they specialize in old country farmhouse type antiques. That's what most of the shops in this particular town specialise in. And there's about 4 or 5 shops in this small country town, and it's developed the whole town has developed a reputation with the people coming up from Melbourne. There's people who come up all the way from Melbourne, which is like 250 kilometres away. They'll drive all the way up to this one little country town, and they'll go antique shopping in this one little country town. And, it's a good business for them.
Sure.
But I go there and I know what I'm after, and I'll ask in the shops, and they all know me because I've bought a lot of stuff from them in the past, and I say, do you have X, Y, and Z? And they'll go, let me think. I think I do have one of them out the back. Or you might want to try so-and-so down the road. And this is the thing. This is how rural economies naturally settle if they're left to themselves. Okay? That everybody gets to know everybody. The people who have a good reputation, they become, they get favour. The people who rip people off, don't pull their weight, etc., etc., they become less favoured. That's just how it works.
Interesting you mentioned that. It's interesting you mentioned that. And that brought up the thought, when I lived in the Commonwealth of Virginia, I would ask a shopkeeper, do you have such and such, just as you mentioned. And if they did not have it, the next question would be, well, do you know where I can go to get it? And the answer would be always the same. No, don't know. Now, they did know. They absolutely did know, but they wouldn't tell me.
So they didn't want to send you to their competitors.
Right, they wouldn't do it. They wouldn't do it because they figured that they'd lose me as a customer. Now, in Missouri, it's a little different. In Missouri, oftentimes they'll say, geez, we're out of them, but you can get them, at this other place down the road.
Yeah.
Now, when somebody says that to me, I think, I kind of like these guys because they're willing to send me to their competition. So I want to come back to the first guy as well. I need to get it at the competition now, but I want to come back to the first guy because he treated me right and helped me, even though he didn't have it. Yeah. So 2 ways of looking at it. We'll be right back. Guineith, interesting what's just happened in the last few minutes. So I went down to the garage to check on the calf, the first calf that was born in, Sunday, late Sunday afternoon, just as it was getting dark. And I saw another calf in the garage. So now we have 2 newborn calves in the garage. And what happened was Mrs. Finelli and our son were out feeding the cows, and they noticed a newborn calf, really cold, just born, and they brought him into the garage. So now we have 2 calves sleeping on some hay in the garage. Now, here's what that means. So Orscheln, the company that would not help me with the colostrum, not only did they lose that sale, but now they've lost the replacement milk and colostrum for the next calf. So now they've lost twice as much by not helping me. So now, while I'm not shopping at Orscheln for the milk replacer and the colostrum, I'm going to not be shopping there for the other things that I need. So it kind of works like, and I'm delighted.
Absolutely right. You hit the nail on the head there.
And this was unanticipated. We did not expect to have this 2 calves in the garage, but we do. And we just need to, it's as simple as this. In this modern world of corporations making sure that they take care of their shareholders at the expense of everyone else, like their customers, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to take care of ourselves before we take care of the corporations. That's how it's going to be. And we're going to be loyal to people who are loyal to us. We are not going to be loyal to people who are not loyal to us. It's as simple as that. Do you agree with that, Guineith?
I absolutely agree with that. Yeah.
Okay.
Because why should we take our money out of our local economies okay, and put it into a corporate pocket, which is, where's that money going to end up anyway? I'll tell you where it's going to end up if you put it into a corporate pocket. It's going to end up, with some billionaire CEO who you've never met and doesn't give a rip about you, buying a new house or a new swimming pool or having round-the-world trips with his girlfriend.
Yeah.
That's how it's going to be.
Yep.
And his wife and
his wife and nanny stay home.
With his wife sitting at home none the wiser. That's right. I would much rather put that money into the pocket of the farmer down the road who is really, I don't know any farmer who's not battling to stay afloat. Most of them work hugely long hours, Like I said, the farmer that I mentioned earlier, they have a contracting business where they own harvesters and they go around and they contract harvest other people's wheat crops for them. Wheat is the major cereal crop around here. But a lot of farmers, they don't put in enough wheat to justify, actually going out and buying the machinery for themselves. Maybe they, instead of having like 10 or 20 or 30,000 acres of land, maybe they only have 500 acres. And, if they've only got 100 acres of wheat, instead of 1,000 or 5,000 acres of wheat, it doesn't really justify them buying a harvester. So they get in the contract harvesters, and I'm sure that it will operate something similar where you are, But it's like this. I would rather put money into their pocket than into the pocket of a big corporation.
Well, one of the things that's happening in our neck of the woods is people have need for our mechanical expertise. And we have the need for some hay that we can't grow enough hay. So what's happening now is we are gifting our labor, our work, for a gift of hay. They're gifting us hay, and we're gifting them work. And what's really nice about this gifting business, this gifting enterprise, this gifting model, is the other team isn't siphoning off the top of that. So it's just between us and them, and there's no theft going on with the other team. Now I'm talking about the government. Speaking of the government, I wanted to share this article with you. Now, you said some things that I think people new to this broadcast may not believe. They may think that you're making this stuff up. They may think that, when you talk about the kidnappers, when you talk about the blue team saying, you know what, I can make this ticket go away. All you have to do is, hop in the back seat with me, and or I'll come to your house, and you can do me a favor, that kind of thing. I'm talking about sexual predators.
Goes on.
Yeah, well, okay, some people may not believe. Okay, but some people may not believe this when you say it, Guineith. But let me read this article. This is in the Los Angeles Times, mainstream. Okay, and January 16. Headline: Los Angeles County Sheriff's deputy is charged with selling drugs and offering to hire other cops to protect dealers. What this article is saying is there's a deputy is charged with selling drugs, and he is the ringleader that will hire other cops to protect criminals, drug dealers. Goes on to say, a Los Angeles County Sheriff's deputy has been charged with operating a large-scale drug trafficking scheme in which he boasted that he hired other law enforcement officers to provide security to dealers and could assault people. Let me say that a different way. he could assault people for his clients, according to court records. This guy's name is Collins. Collins and 3 other men were arrested by FBI agents in a sting operation when they arrived to what they thought was a drug deal, according to records unsealed after the arrest. Court documents show that Collins, 50 years old, has been under investigation for months. He was recorded by agents discussing his extensive drug trafficking network, past criminal conduct, and willingness to accept bribes to use his law enforcement status for criminal purposes. He goes on to say, I fix problems. Collins was recorded saying to an undercover agent, I make a lot of things go away. This is a guy in uniform. This is a guy in uniform with gun and other instruments of death at his disposal, hired to protect and serve, and he was protecting and serving a criminal enterprise or criminal enterprises. That's who this guy was. So when you say, Guineith, when you say that this happens, the blue team does this,
they're not on your side.
Right.
The government's not on your side. The blue team's not on your side. Okay? They're operating as a cartel. And I don't know of any law enforcement agency anywhere that is not operating as a cartel. Okay? That means a criminal network. It sounds as if things in LA have gone downhill since Michael Rupert was the head of narcotics enforcement for the LAPD. Unfortunately, Michael Rupert, a couple of years ago, took his own life. Very, very unfortunate. And, just the pressure of decades and decades of trying to expose these sorts of problems and to try and wake up people, and it eventually got too much for him, and unfortunately he took his own life a year or two ago, and I was very, very upset to hear that. But he used to be the head of narcotics enforcement for the LAPD, and he confronted Comey when Comey was the head of the CIA, okay, and in a public press conference, and he said, I know for a fact, my name is Michael Rupert, I'm the head of narcotics enforcement for the LAPD, and I know for a fact that you and your boys are shipping narcotics into LA from Mexico and South America. What do you have to say about that, Mr. Comey? And Mr. Comey was quite at a loss for words at that time. But that particular interview, press conference, or whatever, was filmed and is still there on YouTube, and anyone can go and find it. So if you go into your favourite search engine and type in Michael Rupert, that's Ruppert, confronts the head of the CIA, you'll see it. And I'm pretty sure it was Jim Comey at that time. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that it was him. And, we need to stop supporting these disrespectful pieces of work, because they're not honourable humans. They're evil people.
When we come back, Guineith, when we come back, I'm going to read 3 short paragraphs. It'll probably take me less than a minute to continue about this story. It's unbelievable. Class, please don't touch that dial. Guineith Isaac's with us. Guineith, I'm going to post this article from the Los Angeles Times about the criminal cops, and I just want to read a little bit more from this article. It goes on to say, last year, an undercover agent met with Collins. Now, Collins is the cop who has been charged with running a criminal enterprise. Last year, an undercover agent met with Collins while posing as the relative of a wealthy investor looking to finance an illegal marijuana grow house. The deputy offered to provide security and said they had 3 teams already working in the region, including one that was protected an illegal marijuana grow house disguised as an auto repair shop. In another meeting to discuss the security plan for the grow house, Collins showed off his sheriff's badge and lifted his shirt to show a gun in his waistband, the complaint said. He later said that he could provide teams of security made up of cops who travel with guns, and boasted that he and 2 comrades were hired by a client to set ablaze an $85,000 Cadillac truck in order to intimidate someone. I'm paraphrasing. Collins sold about 2 pounds of marijuana to the agent for $6,000 as a test run to demonstrate his ability to arrange and carry out deals, federal authorities allege. The deputy said that he had connections to marijuana operations in Northern California and could sell the agent $4 million of marijuana each month. This is what we're talking about. This is big business.
But it totally does not surprise me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
These people have definitely lost the moral high ground. These police are the problem. And, you know, they're not on your side. They're actually more or less, if you could see into their clubhouse, into their back room, you would see them operating, you know, that they are a criminal cartel. They're not just operating as a criminal cartel, they are a criminal cartel. And they operate in everything from child kidnapping to highway robbery to, you know, drug trafficking, you name it. And most of the time, when police do big drug busts, the drugs come in the front door. They sit in the evidence room for a day or so, and then they mysteriously get picked up by somebody and end up going out the back door. And they end up on the streets.
Mm-hmm. And then what happens when you say...
That's how it's been for decades in most places in the world.
Yeah. And so what happens when the person who's, we'll call it equipment or whatever it might be, it goes missing? What happens? Well, you know, we can't find it. It's disappeared. So the cops steal whatever it is from a person.
Yeah.
They put it in the evidence room. It disappears. It's unbelievable that they're not held accountable for the property of a person that they steal from and then claim it's been lost. And who are you going to call? Are you going to call the cops? It's a real problem. And that's why so many people don't trust the cops. Yeah. Because their personal property has been stolen. Ground. Well, they steal their cars.
The moral high ground.
Yeah, they steal their cars, their tools, their equipment. And, you know, of course, they claim it's all in the interest of keeping us safe.
Yeah, we don't need to be kept safe from them. They are the problem. Most people in country areas are perfectly capable of looking after themselves, and most people in city areas are also perfectly capable of looking after themselves. The police just need to get out of the way.
Yeah, leave us alone.
And let us look after ourselves.
Yeah. Gwyneth Isaacs, thank you so much. There's a link to Gwyneth Isaacs' Facebook page at usaprepares.com, usaprepares.com. Gwyneth, thanks so much for being with us. I'll see you next Wednesday.
Okay, have a great week.